Hi, I'm Lois Haggard from the New Mexico Department of Health. This is part 4 of the training video series for developing an IBIS-Q query module. We're going to look at the ibisq.def file. You might also hear it referred to as a func file, which refers to older versions of IBIS-Q that use standard functions for counts and rates. The .def file is located in the IBIS-Q backend folder on the IBIS-Q server. Again, my computer, my desktop computer, has a drive, its Q drive is mapped to the IBIS-Q folder on the IBIS-Q server. In that folder is a Q modules directory, and it has a subfolder called Statepop, and in Statepop are all the backend Q query module files needed to run the Statepop query. We're going to look at the count.def file. It's pretty simple. There aren't very many lines. I'm going to go through and talk about what each line is doing. At the top here, this type special. This is the new version of IBIS-Q where we define the SAS templates and don't depend on standard functions. So this boundary line, it has to be there. It has to have exactly 8 hyphens. It has to be spelled like that with 8 hyphens. And then inside this section of the file is the SAS template that IBIS-Q is going to use to write the SAS program. The first thing I want to point out is this proc summary is the procedure it's running, and it's running it on a dataset called TMP. Well, where does that come from? TMP is the dataset that was defined in the config file for the numerators. So the SAS path, IBIS-Q SAS data final, and the dataset name is Statepop 00_06. But temp has also been filtered to the filters that the user applied. So if the user is only looking at 2 years of data, temp would be filtered to those years. Or if they're only looking at one state in the data query, then temp would be filtered to that one state. And then the procedure is summing across the values of pop count. And again, looking at the data set, we have these 3 dimension variables, state, county, and year, and those dimensions are available to filter or to cross-tabulate for the variable pop count, which is the numeric population estimate. The next part of the DEF file is in the proc summary. We have a class statement, and these %cross1% and %cross2% are macro variables that IBIS-Q uses, and these could be, for instance, year or county, whatever cross variables the user selected in the query. This question mark cross2 question mark is specific to IBIS-Q. This is code that IBIS-Q reads as, is there a cross2 variable? Because there doesn't have to be. And if there is a cross2 variable, then read this line. If there isn't, then skip this line. And that's why the semicolon is on the following line, because if there's no cross2 variable, this line gets skipped and it wouldn't be well formed, or the syntax for SAS would be wrong. Then we're outputting the data into a data set called temp, so we're overwriting our temp data set, and the proc summary procedure that we're using is sum. We're doing a summation over the values of the variable, and we're calling it n. That's the name of the summed pop count variable, and then we submit it. This proc print data equals temp is not needed for IBIS-Q. This is something that we use in debugging so that we can call for the output of the procedure to look at the full output, and anyway, we use that for debugging. Next is this XML out map file. This you don't have to worry about, or I'm not going to explain that in this video. But this is a file that tells IBIS-Q how to format the XML. Finally, we have an output variable. We're outputting the variable n as was the result of the proc summary. And here you can see our proc summary result. And the user has filtered the data to these 3 years and has run the data by cross 1 equals year. And they've filtered the data to the state of Utah. So these are the Utah population estimates for 2004, 2005, and 2006, 2.5 million in 2006, across all 29 counties in Utah. So this is the output of the proc summary, and here's what it looks like when SAS sends it to IBIS-Q. We have a total row and then values for 2004, 5, and 6, separated by a comma. Okay, this is the end of developing an IBIS Query Module Part 4. The next part, Part 5 in the series, will review the IBIS Query Application URL that IBIS View sends to IBIS-Q. Thank you.